Welcome to the Tumbleweed Podcast, where we discuss an eclectic range of topics, including business, design, Texas culture, and everything in between.
We're two teachers that turned a side hustle into a nationally known apparel brand, and now we work with some of the biggest names in Texas. We strive to never stop exploring and continue to draw inspiration from our adventures.
So drift and explore or raise a glass. We're always ready to hang out and talk about the things that we love. So come roll with us as we drift and explore.
All right. Good morning, Brian.
Hey, how are you today?
Great. Another episode of the Tumbleweed Podcast. Here we are.
No doubt. What were you doing about 15 minutes ago?
I was drawing color wheels with my students.
Very cool.
So,
Very cool.
So now we're doing something a little different. Now we're going to talk a little bit about Texas.
Hey, it's our favorite subject.
So I kind of wanted to get in today. We want to do kind of a special Texas Independence Day episode and kind of talk a little bit about history of Texas, kind of some things that we like about Texas. It's going to be like an all-encompassing Texas episode. We would talk about, a lot of different things that make up kind of why we started our brand and things like that. So I guess we'll just kind of start it with that. So when we started our brand in 2011, I guess one thing that we really were looking, and one of the problems we were trying to solve, a lot of times when you start a small business, everybody's like, well, or an entrepreneur, you got to find a problem and then trying to figure out a solution for that. And I think early on, one of what we considered a problem was there just wasn't any cool like Texas gear out there that was actually something that we would want to wear that was comfortable, whether it would be the design or actually the garment that it was on. So maybe talk a little bit about that and kind of why we got into that niche and we felt that was.
Well, as all of you have probably heard our other episodes or heard or read our story, I saw Jeb sketching and I thought it was a beautiful image that needed to be used in some capacity, and from there, that's where that discussion came, is where do we put a Texas design? And I think you and I both kind of went to the mall, different stores, kind of started looking at what's the problem that we could resolve with your art. And it was very evident that those t-shirts that we saw at the mall and different places were super conservative or super edgy, not edgy, but super aggressive of don't mess with Texas, or, horrible print, not a whole lot of vintage and cool.
Lots of guns and stuff.
Probably a lot of guns and,
flags and cannons.
No doubt. And it was stuff that you would probably find at a Western store and not necessarily at a cool hip spot like in Marfa.
Yeah. And I think one thing that we wanted to really dig into and really find a spot for the Texas pride thing is basically why we started the company.
Yeah.
If we want to just even back it up and not even talk about designs in general, it's just Texas pride in general, just like how proud Texans are and they want to wear stuff with Texas on it. And so I think us kind of filling that hole of, trying to create designs that actually fit true Texans and fit the culture of Texas, I think at the time was a little bit unique. I think we kind of jumped on that trend pretty early. And as you notice, and as we've both noticed over the years, there's been a lot of companies that have come in and try to emulate some of the things that we've done. I think we're pretty proud to say that we were definitely one of the first in that market or in that niche early on before this trend really got hot.
Well, I believe so. Chet Garner, who I think is kind of one of the gurus of all things Texas, him and a group, I believe, with Texas Highways, did a vote of ranking some of the most iconic or notable artists throughout Texas. And I don't know if you remember, but you were one of those, your Texas Town's design was thrown out there as one of the most iconic or best art designs of Texas. And I think when we started talking about not just designs, but launching shirts, one of the things we wanted to do was create something that my parents would wear, our high school students might wear, our kids might wear, but something that you could wear specifically to go to a concert, go hiking, go traveling. It'd be something that people would be proud of to live out the things of Texas, the lifestyle, the culture, the music, the food, the barbecue. And so I think you've nailed it. And your art, and then of course our team now has followed your lead. Art has really encompassed the true pride and culture of Texas. And so that's what we're here, and while we're celebrating the wonderful, amazing day of Texas Independence Day. And so, for those of you that might not know, can you share with them what exactly is Texas Independence Day and why is it even a big deal?
Well, another little nugget of information about me is that I used to teach Texas history.
Yeah,
So I did teach Texas history um, for 6 years at Clark Middle School here in Frisco. It was awesome. I loved every minute of it because I was a big fan of Texas history when I was a kid.
right.
You know, if you're a Texan and you grew up in Texas like both of us did,
Yeah,
um, fourth grade, you take a little Texas history. And
yeah,
then in seventh grade, you have an entire year class that is Texas history. And when
yep,
I tell people that, they are blown away. They're like, wait, y'all have an entire year dedicated to your state's history?
yeah,
I'm like, absolutely.
yeah.
We're Texas, man. Come
Well,
on.
not only that, but do you remember standing up? You say the Pledge of Allegiance,
Oh, yeah.
but what else would you say it to the Texas
Say it
flag as
to the
well?
Texas flag because we always, and we still say it at school. It's a state law. So you say the
You remember
pledge
it?
to the flag. Of course, I remember it. I say it every day.
What is it?
It is honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
All right. I'm not gonna lie, I've been out of the classroom for a few years, so it's not engraved in my mind anymore,
It's
but
it's
yeah.
not something that we always had when I was growing up. I'm a little older than you, but we never had to say it in school. But they made it a state law recently. But getting back to your point about what Texas Independence Day is, and that ties in kind of with the history part of it. But Texas Independence Day it's celebrated on March the 2nd. It's actually March the 2nd, 1836.
Yeah,
I think there were like 59 delegates that gathered at Washington on the Brazos in a small little like little wood, log cabin type of thing, and they declared independence from Mexico at the
right.
time. And of
Yeah,
course, this was during this March 2nd. So if you know your timeline, March 6th was when the Battle of the Alamo happened. So it was 4 days before the Battle of the Alamo. Of course, the Texans that were inside there, the 186, 188 Texans that were inside the walls of the Alamo, were surrounded by, thousands and thousands of Mexicans led by Santa Anna at the time in San Antonio. So we declared independence from Mexico 4 days before the Alamo. So we had
yeah.
a whole group of delegates, that were further to the east that did that. Um, it ended up, we can get into all the other history stuff too,
Right.
but I mean, it basically boiled down to Mexico was trying to, after Santa Anna was elected, he was trying to basically take back a lot of the land and
Yeah,
stuff up in Texas because Texas at the time was part of Mexico, and so there were settlers coming in from the United States, and they were starting to kind of make it their
mhm,
own. Their culture was a little bit different than the Mexican culture. They were really far away from Mexico City, so there was a lot of disconnect there, and so Santa Anna was kind of wanting to take back some of that land. The Texans were like, "Hey, we kind of like it here. We want to
yeah,
kind of keep it the way we are. We don't really respect some of the Mexican laws and things like that." And so that's kind of where the beef started. And as Santa Anna started moving north and stuff, that's kind of when it got into a full on
yeah,
war. But we declared independence on the 2nd. So that's why we celebrate Texas Independence Day uh, on the 2nd of March. Obviously, the Battle of the Alamo didn't go so well.
right.
The Texans were slaughtered there. Then there was the Battle of Goliad, which was a complete massacre. But then as the Mexican army started heading to the east, Sam Houston and his army
Yeah.
kind of gathered everybody together and ended up winning the Battle of San Jacinto in 18 minutes
Wow.
in the middle of the afternoon on, I guess that is April 21st, 1836. So
Yeah.
that was a done deal there. And then Texas declared their independence, and they had already done that. And so they became the Republic of Texas.
There you go.
Yeah. And that's when we made those really cool shirts, the 1836
Yeah.
shirts. It's one of my favorite designs that we did.
Well, one of my favorite things that people don't really recognize or understand is our cannons and how our logo ever really came to be, and being the twin sisters.
Mhm.
Two of my, I guess, historical things that I love is one, the yellow rose, and then of course the come and take it, the twin cannons, twin sisters. So I don't remember Bertha and no, what's the names?
The twin sisters, I believe, were cannons that were used at the Alamo,
Yeah, yeah,
apparently. And then there was a different cannon that was at the Battle of Gonzales, and that was back in October of 1835. That was another thing. Like Santa Anna wanted to go and collect all these cannons that he knew that were out there,
yeah,
and he didn't want them used against him, so he was going to have the army come and get those. And that's kind of when the Texans were like, no, they buried it in a peach orchard, and they were like made a flag and said, "Yeah, come and take it." And
Yeah.
they pulled it out and fired it off at them and stuff.
Dude, it would have been awesome to be a student in your class. I mean, I remember in my Texas history class, I think it was Texas history, doing a map with, was it clay? Like doing the different
Oh
regions.
wow, yeah.
That's a project that I remember. Do you have it? Do you your memories back in New Braunfeld area? It was, or where did you grow up
Well,
during
when I
that
took
time?
Texas history, I was in Lufkin.
Lufkin,
So
okay,
that's where I was in 7th grade. That was over in East Texas. And yeah, my Texas history experience was, it's actually kind of funny looking back on it now. It's like my my Texas history teacher, I mean, he looked like James Brown. He had like the Jerry curl going, and he had like these really bright rimmed glasses. He was a very eccentric guy, but he knew his stuff. And so we learned about all the Indians, all the
that's
regions and
cool.
stuff. And then he left at mid-year. I don't know what happened.
Oh man,
There was some kind of controversy. He ended up leaving. And then my second semester actually ended up, we got this coach, and he was a former Texas Tech football player, like
okay,
a legend there. His name was Comet Burley. He was a coach at the high school, but he was
yeah,
teaching Texas history, so I finished up with him. So
wow,
Comet Burley he's a legend at Texas Tech as far as one of the best players to ever come through there. But he was my Texas history
okay,
teacher my second semester. Fell in love with Texas, history. Of course, we were doing maps. I loved Native American
yeah,
type stuff, and so it was right down my alley.
that's cool.
It was
Well, that
awesome.
it's my memory is probably not as historical as that, but it was from North Crowley, so south of Fort Worth. We hopped into a bus, and our field trip was to the Dr. Pepper Museum,
Oh, that's cool.
and I want to say it was the Ranger Museum. So basically, we went to Waco,
Yeah.
but that was when it was eye opening to me that the history behind Texas, outside of the book, actually physically going and learning about the history, and the Dr. Pepper was obviously a small part of that. But what field trips did y'all take growing up?
Well, I moved around a lot. So I started out, my school was in San Antonio. So I went
Okay,
to
yeah,
kindergarten, first grade in San Antonio. My dad was from San Antonio. So we were just basically surrounded by, we could go down the missions anytime we wanted to. The Alamo was like just right there. So I knew about all the history of all that kind of stuff early on, or at least I knew about those buildings. And of course in San Antonio, that's all you see on TV. Like it's more celebratory down, I think, in South Texas, because that's where a lot of those historical spots were. But we used to go like the butter crust factory.
okay,
I think I may have missed out on the Alamo trips,
right,
because I think those, maybe they took them when we were a little bit older and we had
yeah,
already left by then. Um, but just, kind of some really cool, another cool thing we used to do. I think when I was a little, we would go to the Buckhorn Saloon,
uh huh,
which is actually in the old Lone Star Brewery.
oh wow,
And so you could go there, and like, it was like this Buckhorn Saloon. It was just basically known for like having all these like exotic
yeah,
animals, that were stuffed and stuff, mounts and stuff, like hundreds and hundreds of them and stuff.
yeah,
And then you get like a little wooden nickel thing, and you trade it in for like a root beer, and your parents could like trade it in for like a Lone Star or something. So
that's cool.
it was cool. So
That's
we'd
cool.
always went down there, and that was a real historical spot as well.
I remember the first time I went to the Alamo. You read about it. There's movies about it, and we were on a student council trip. I think we stayed at Trinity
Hmm.
College, and
Yeah.
then the Alamo was a big deal. And I just remember walking up to him like, "Really? That's all it is?" But then you go in and you actually experience the courtyard, and you see pieces of different history spots on the
Right.
wall and the building, and it's just amazing, that history and that story, and seeing that the Alamo right there, and just knowing what happened, many years ago with
Oh
that.
yeah, it's incredible. And a lot of people, they don't realize, they look at the Alamo, the part that's left is just like the chapel part.
Right.
But I mean, there was a huge, compound around it. The walls, stretched way out. So
Yeah.
like they were all inside those walls. It was just, it's pretty crazy.
So what is it about Texas? So obviously Tumbleweed Textiles, we're all about Texas. You're as Texan as anyone I know. You have so many incredible stories that we've been able to tell through our history of our company. But at the end of the day, what is it that you love most that drives your pride for Texas?
Wow. And I think it does, some of it does stem back to, and I think this is the case for a lot of people. It stems back to those revolutionary days. It's like it's so cool that at one point Texas was its own country.
Yeah.
So we kind of have this like little chip on our shoulder, like, yeah, I mean, hey, we were our own country at one point.
Yeah.
And that's pretty cool when
Yeah.
you think about it. Like, we could get along by ourselves for a while. So that part of it I thought it's really cool. And I think that gives a lot of people kind of pride. Another thing I think that gives a lot of people pride is just the size of
For sure.
Texas.
Yeah.
It's like we're bigger than everybody except for Alaska, and Alaska's way up there, so no one's really ever been up there before. And
The UFOs are.
no, that's true. Yeah, apparently they are. So the size of Texas, and I think another thing is just the regions in Texas. There's so many different parts of Texas. You can be in the mountains,
Right.
you can be up in the Panhandle, in the South Plains and things, and it's flat as a board. And there's a lot of agriculture and farming there. And we got the second largest canyon
Yeah.
in the country, next to the Grand Canyon, which is Paladuro Canyon.
Right.
We've got coastline. We've got probably more coastline than most. Our coastline is huge. And then we've got East Texas, so we've got the piney woods. We've got kind of some hill country areas. We've got flowing rivers and stuff. South Texas. So we've got every little bit of reach. So I think people are really proud about those things in particular. And then of course, when you have those many different regions and stuff, you're going to have different types of food influences. I think the food is a big deal when you think about East Texas is so close to Louisiana, so you get that Cajun flair.
Yeah.
Okay, well, down in San Antonio and South Texas, you're close to Mexico, and so you still have that Mexican flair of food. And then you get up in the Panhandle and stuff, and it's all about cattle and beef and like the cowboy way of life. And so there's all these different regions of different food and different ways you can cook things.
Yeah,
I think that makes people.
Well, I think that, to me, about the thing that's so special about Texas, the pride is the people, and
no doubt.
And you mentioned you go down South Texas, there's the influence of Mexico. You go to other parts, there might be even influence the Gulf area, the being on the beach, and but going to Texas Tech, one of the influences that I think is underrated is the influence from New Mexico, green chili and different things like that with the art and different Native American Indian patterns. The Buffalo, Paladuro Canyon. That was actually Hillary and I's one of our first dates was rolling out to Paladuro and hiking that, which was incredible. But with all that travel, you mentioned that. What's one of your most, I guess, memorable or favorite drives that you and your family love to go on?
Let's see. I have a lot of favorite drives throughout Texas. I think some of the prettiest drives that I've ever done are usually out further west.
Right. Oh yeah.
Obviously, when you get out towards now, the drive out there isn't always that great. So if you're coming from Dallas and you're trying to go to Big Bend or something, it's once you get past, Cisco or Ranger, it gets pretty flat, and then you get out there and it's just like, where am I? And you get through Midland, Odessa, and you're like, holy cow.
Yeah.
But once you start getting and seeing those mountains and stuff, but once you kind of get down into the Big Bend region, I'll tell you what's really pretty is down there by like the Davis Mountains.
Oh, 100%.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
Down there. And then of course, if you get down near Presidio and start driving around the Rio Grande down there by Big Bend Ranch State Park, it's so beautiful. And then of course, when you get into Big Bend, it's gorgeous there. But I think that part is that probably goes without saying. I think some other really pretty places in Texas to drive would be like Lost Maples State Park.
Yeah.
It's kind of south of, or I guess to the southwest kind of, or west of San Antonio, kind of south of Kerrville down there by Lakey, and you got the Frio River and that whole area.
Yeah.
I think that's really beautiful, and there's so many little small towns down there that it's not saturated with folks yet.
Definitely for me, and it's actually through a tumbleweed experience, was when we went to the first Viva Big Bend Music Fest out in Marfa in Alpine. And you said it's like going through hell. I mean, you're going through Midland and you're going out in 20, 80, however you get out there. And then out of nowhere, it's like an aura. It's a movie set. It really is. It's the prettiest blue sky, clouds. And then you just going down straight down that road. I was mesmerized about the beauty, heading out to the far, West Texas, Santa Elena Canyon, that area.
It's just so quiet.
Yeah.
And everything, you just kind of are able, all your senses are kind of awakening, and you're able to just kind of take it all in.
No doubt.
The nature, just the skies, just the sunsets are beautiful because there's nothing down there blocking them.
For sure. And I know people love the mountains of Colorado. They're beautiful. And the beaches of Florida are obviously amazing. But there's something, maybe it's because I went to Tech, but there's something to me about West Texas as you're heading towards New Mexico to even drive up to Colorado. I love just the mesas and not the full mountains, I don't know, I just love that until you see all the turbines that have ruined that image. But
the windmills, the area on the way to Lubbock, like around, like I guess it's Dickens, and before you get up on the Cap Rock, that whole area by where Cap Rock Canyon State Park and
Yeah.
stuff is,
Yeah.
a little bit further to the west of that or east of that. It's really pretty too, the red dirt and stuff. So yeah, I mean, and then of course you get over in East Texas, it's a whole different.
Yeah, for
I mean, you
sure.
can't even see what's coming up. You can't even see the exits because the trees are so tall. It's just
Right.
a whole different.
Well, I feel like that's actually a hard drive too, going from Dallas to Louisiana, because it's just the trees in the road for a while, and it's
Mhm.
the same thing over and over. But I love trees, so it's a beautiful area. And just this last weekend, I traveled to go visit a lot of our wholesalers, and I didn't realize how beautiful the outskirts of Dripping Springs, all the winding roads and the hills up
Yeah.
and down
Mhm.
on the edge of the hill country. Obviously, going into Fredericksburg is
Right.
just gorgeous as
Oh
well.
yeah, it's pretty. And of course, I ended up kind of going to school down there in New Braunfels through high school, so my folks are still down in that area. But that whole hill country area,
Yeah,
Kerrville, Fredericksburg, Bernie, and then everything kind of in between all those little winding roads. Yeah, anything to the west of Austin is just,
yeah.
you get out kind of off the main beaten paths, and it's really pretty for sure.
You start, we mentioned a few things, but Viva Big Bend Music Fest, of course, Austin City Limits, South by Southwest, the amazing Troubadour Fest by our friends there, the Texas music culture, how that has impacted not just Texas, but the United States. It's just, to me, we've mentioned food, and we've mentioned geographics and locations and the beauty of the road, of traveling. But what amazing to me is just the musicians of Texas that have, to me, kind of driven a lot of the music culture. Um, Obviously, we love Pat Green and Willie Nelson and all the Texas country guys. But what are some of your favorite musicians that come out of Texas?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. Of course, you already named a few. Of course, I'm a big Willie Nelson fan, so I love his stuff. I think he's, when you think of Texas music, he's kind of
Hmm.
he's up there for sure. And
100%.
of
Yeah.
course, you have like George Strait. Growing up down in South Texas, he's like, he
Yeah.
is the king.
Is it Banderas?
No, I think he was. I want to say Pleasanton,
Okay.
Texas. It
Yeah.
starts with a P. I don't think it was Pearsall. Maybe Pleasant. It's down there. It's where he kind of grew up, or started out. But yeah, those guys. But then you can like kind of break every region down. Like West Texas, you got Waylon Jennings, you got Joe Ely,
Yeah.
Roy Orbison is from out
Yeah.
there.
Buddy Holly.
Buddy Holly from Lubbock. So I mean, you've got West Texas kind of has their own little thing going as well. And then we've had some big, superstars, in the pop world too that have come
For
out of
sure.
Texas.
Yeah. Beyonce.
Beyonce, ZZ Top, one of the
Yeah.
greatest rock bands out there. And, they kind of got that whole thing kicked off. And there's
Meatloaf.
Meatloaf. Yeah, I forgot about Meatloaf. He was
It's
from Dallas, I think.
we talk about Texas music. I grew up obviously 90s, early 2000s punk band that I listened to, Bowling for Soup.
Yeah.
Which is funny because I was up at the Gin in Prosper, and there's this dude that does not look like a Prosper resident, and I'm like, oh wow, that's the lead singer from Bowling for Soup,
Oh wow.
living
Hanging
just
out in
right here.
Prosper. That's cool.
It's the music culture. Let's go kind of talk about Viva Big Ben. Heading out there, that was one of the most amazing experiences I've had as it relates to music. Getting to go to not just listen to music, but I mean, you could look to your right or left, and there's other musicians that had just played or that will be playing the next few days that were just sitting there listening to their friends,
Yeah.
songwriters, and you know, kind of talking about that Viva Big Ben and that songwriting community. What's your, I guess, the influence of that it's played even on our business or just your love for music?
Yeah, I think Texas has done a great job with, we've kind of, a lot of people outside of Texas don't know a lot about what's going on. I think they're finding out.
Mhm.
I think Texas country music and Americana is definitely is stretching out. Because there's some artists from Texas that can now travel nationwide, and
Yeah.
they have, they're selling out shows no matter where they go. But with the Kerrville Folklife Festival, that was something that was going on like back in the '80s and maybe before. Like, it was just where people were getting around the campfire and singing and stuff, and it became like a big deal for that type of music. The Viva Big Bend thing
Yeah.
has been huge. Willie Nelson's brought something like that is Luck, Texas, like
Yeah.
the Luck. That's a whole. So there's all these little pockets of kind of like little music festivals and stuff. But like you said, the Viva Big Bend thing was it really was fun because I can't remember how many musicians there were, like 70 or 80 probably.
Yeah.
that were playing in 3 different towns, and then each town had it was like Marfa, Alpine, and Fort Davis, and then each place had 4 or 5 venues, and then they just had this schedule, and
Right.
some of it overlapped and stuff, and so you'd have to kind of plan out your days and see, okay, we want to go see John Evans, he's playing in Fort Davis, but then we want to get back to see
Yeah.
Mike and the Moon Pies because they're playing at in
Yeah.
Alpine, and so we would schedule out, and there's some people we had to like say we're just gonna have to miss them, maybe
Yeah.
we've seen them before or something, so we would skip that. But that was really fun. Like you said, we might, go see the O's play. We
Oh,
saw them
man.
play in Alpine, and then we go to the next day, and then they're hanging out at a show that,
You're right.
and they're real accessible too, and you can just like talk to people,
Yeah.
and then everybody's just really cool and laid back. And
that's the music culture. The thing I love about that is, I mean, guys like Drew Kennedy, Uncle Lucius was there. Just the it's a music industry, but you go maybe Nashville or other locations, and it's a competition. People are competing for their place to make money. A lot of the musicians that we've met, it's a camaraderie of helping each other build each other up, sharing songwriting, lyrics and things. And that's one thing I appreciate about Marfa at Viva Big Ben, is seeing the collaborations of musicians.
right.
We a few names I just want to make sure I say is like Leon Bridges, Charlie Crockett. I don't know if he's actually he's I don't know if he's where he's actually from, but he's definitely been immersed in Texas culture.
Definitely.
And
Laid
man,
his roots here for sure.
but so with all that, moving over to like apparel, I mean, that's what we do. And we've kind of mentioned the influences of music and food and travel, history on our brand and why we're a proud Texans. But apparel, I mean, to me, that's one of the things that people don't realize is just how many brands that are kind of in our niche that are pretty awesome, that are from the Dallas Fort Worth area, or obviously Austin, or the kind of the mecca of fashion. But what are some of your favorite brands that obviously aren't Tumbleweed Textiles?
Right. Well, when you have a state that has whatever we have 30 something million people here,
Hmm.
you're going to have people that can make great food. You're going to have people that can create great music, you hope. And then you're going to have, people that you're going to have we're the 9th largest economy in the world.
Right.
So we got stuff going on in this state
No
for
doubt.
sure.
That's why people are moving from California to get here.
I know. So like you said, there are some really great brands that have come up and that have been around for a while. Of course, obviously one of my favorites is Haller Brothers.
Right.
I love their stuff. I think they have a really cool sense of design. And the cool thing about them is they kind of tie in like a surf culture,
Right.
a laid back kind of like tiki bar, surf culture, Texas Western flair kind of thing going on. So that, that a lot of those elements are very appealing to me and things that I like to wear. I'm a big Pearl Snap guy. I'm a rope hat guy, and they do it about as good as anybody. So I like wearing their stuff.
And I respect them because they, I think, are true curators of their fashion. They're not. I mean, I don't know who they copied, because there's no one else like them. Whereas I think you mentioned earlier, I mean, there's so many other brands that are popping up that, like, oh, that's a copycat of maybe us or Howler Brothers or other brands. And so I have a lot of respect for Howler and how they have done what they do. And one of my favorite stories I read about them was how they gather inspiration for design. And he mentioned from like old vintage wallpaper was the pattern of one of their shirts. And
Cool.
I think it's just really cool how their eye for design, and they're able to apply it
they're talented, and they're doing good things.
Yeah.
Cricket's another great brand
For sure.
And they came out, maybe I don't know when they started, but it was maybe a little bit after we came out. But of course, we wouldn't consider them really competitors or anything, because they're more kind of in the golf polo kind of preppy, quarter zip sweaters, things like that. But they're out of Austin, and they do some really good stuff.
That's the brand that Luke and Owen Wilson rep.
One of them does. I think one of the brothers is part owner or something. He has something to do with it, or investor. So
that's cool.
But yeah, they got some really cool polo, and that's kind of the old throwback polo. So if you like the old golf shirts from like the 70s and 80s, kind of with the multiple buttons and kind of the collars that look old school.
Yeah. Well, my favorite brands is I always probably butcher the name, but Hari Mari out here in Dallas. I know it's kind of a beachy sandal brand, but to me, it's kind of backdoor or a backyard dad brand, grilling and just kind of living in the suburban life. But their sandals are just super comfy, and I thought that was amazing. That I always thought of them as just a hyper local brand, but when we were out at Martha's Vineyard for our annual trip, they were selling Harimaris out there.
That's right.
And I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, they're and I guess we first saw them at one of the Untapped festivals.
Yeah,
They had just started, and they
Yeah.
were like setting up, giving out stuff, and you could buy flip flops. I think I bought a pair for like
Yeah.
$45 or something.
For sure.
Which back then was, kind of cheap. Now it would be a little bit more expensive, probably.
Yeah, but it's amazing. I mean, how many celebrities and influencers wear their stuff. GQ magazines, covered them. So I think it's amazing to know that they were just sitting there, a 10 by 10 tent with us, and now they're just have blown up, taken off.
Nationwide
Yeah.
brand. Yeah, I mean, you can't talk about Texas brands probably without talking about like Yeti.
Oh
They're
man.
probably
Yeah.
the pinnacle of making it to the top.
And not even just and all these brands we're talking about, it's not just about the cool products that they create, but they have just nailed it with creating a culture around Texas inspired life, but in their industry.
Right.
Yet you mentioned Yeti. I mean, Meat Church reps them, and different fishermen and athletes. It's just cool to see how these products, these brands have become just a everyday part of the Texas lifestyle, or hunting lifestyle, camping lifestyle, golf, as you mentioned. And I think some of these brands that are maybe not known or don't, you think of Levi's or Ralph Lauren, but I just love the way these Texas brands are connecting to people and making something really cool with their passion.
Yeah, the Yeti. I don't know if you've heard much about those guys, but the kind of the story behind those two brothers, that
Yeah.
started Yeti. It's a really neat. And I actually learned their story kind of on a podcast I listened to. But
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't really. They were just fishermen, and they were just looking for a better cooler of some sort to have in their boat to stand on to fish on, and something that had some grip and that was going to be sturdy. And then it turned in there. I guess their father did like fishing poles or
Right.
fishing rods and stuff, and they had some special sealant or something that they. I
Yeah.
mean, it was just this whole really cool.
That's
little
cool.
thing that they. Anyway, and it's blown up now. They sponsor like was it Austin FC? Like they're
Yeah.
like they're on the front of their jerseys and stuff.
FC Dallas, if you're listening, come
Yeah.
to us. We would like to do that for you guys.
Yeah. How many
Um,
millions that would cost.
but and we've mentioned some of those, but another brand that comes to mind that my wife likes, but Kendra Scott, out of Austin. It's their influence on the jewelry world, that world has been pretty incredible.
Oh yeah, my wife and daughter eat that stuff up too, for sure.
But yeah. So what other things? Texas Independence Day, pride, love for all that we do.
We can talk about drinks.
Let's do it.
We haven't talked about that really that much.
Craft beer, I'm listening.
Well, I won't get too much into craft beer, but
Oh man.
you got to talk about Dr. Pepper.
Yeah.
You can talk about Texas drinks for sure. I mean, that's going to be like iconic Texas soft drink, I guess you could say.
I mentioned earlier my little trip in middle school to the Dr. Pepper Museum. That was kind of my entry into that Texas cult following world, if that makes sense. I just in South Fort Worth, you just don't think a whole lot about that, except for you go to Fort Worth and Stockyards. But when we first got Dr. Pepper Museum as a retailer, I thought that was like a pretty high pinnacle for our Tumbleweed Textiles success. Dr. Pepper, you probably could tell it better. You're better at telling stories. The whole history of Dr. Pepper.
Oh gosh,
like
don't put me on the
no.
spot on that.
Oh, okay.
I don't know the history.
Is
of
it
Dr.
Dublin?
Pepper. Dublin Dr. Pepper, I think, was one of the bottling plants or something, and they actually would use, I want to say, pure cane sugar eventually, and they used like the pure cane sugar in their ingredients up until recently. I don't know how many years ago they stopped, but that was kind of like where you could go and get a Dr. Pepper that had cane sugar in it, and it was supposed to be better.
Well, if I remember correctly, a gentleman was telling me that actually had worked at the original plant, that bootlegging was a big thing. Like people would drive in from other states and go there to get the original Dr. Pepper. And I'm talking about this is years and years ago. But it's just amazing how is such a big thing, and it's such a Texas drink, but it's a super treat for people all around the country that can recognize that Dr. Pepper brand, and just like Shiner, or Lone Star beer, it's truly a Texas iconic staple.
Right. Yeah, and I guess of course, it's really cool that we were able to do some designs for Dr. Pepper because I mean that's as a
Yeah,
kid you just drink Dr. Pepper when you're in Texas. It
for
just seems
sure.
like that's just the way it is. But Lone Star Beer, Shiner, Pearl, all those are original to
Yeah,
Texas.
yeah.
Shiner still brewing in Texas. They still have their main facilities here in Texas. Lone Star and Pearl. Pearl, they tried to bring that back recently. I think that's kind of gone away.
Okay.
So it's kind of more of a they were bought by, I want to say, Pabst, along with Lone Star. But just a lot of our designs and some of the stuff that we do, whether it's around the honky tonk culture or just the neon signs,
Right.
some of the ideas that I get, some of the things that I collect. Like I love to collect Pearl, Lone Star
Yeah.
beer memorabilia and things. And so I get a lot of design inspiration from them. So you may see some of our shirts that have some sort of ode to either Pearl or Lone Star in a subtle way, even
Right.
Shiner, just kind of giving them some props because they're, kind of the original Texas, ones that there was a lot of breweries way back then, but those are kind of three that kind of ended up standing out and making it for a while.
It's we mentioned Texas culture, people, obviously food, fashion, all the things we discussed. But just think about how much that's affected even the movies, Dazed and Confused, Urban Cowboy, just certain movies that were out of Texas that really made a major impact on culture across the whole country. I mean, it's kind of before my time in a sense, because I was born in '83, but Urban Cowboy I think came in about that time.
1980, I think, is when it came out.
But
So you weren't even born.
no, but I like John Travolta, and
Yeah.
we had a great party not too long ago at our store, and people loved that Urban Cowboy
Oh yeah.
party that we threw. But like, I bet was that kind of like the catalyst across the country of Pearl Snaps and
I definitely think
Lone
it
Star
was.
beer?
That kind of kicked off that whole, like, what is going on in Texas? That
Yeah,
is really cool. Like the whole cowboy the culture. I mean, people in Hollywood started dressing with pearl snaps and like the big hats, and then like the Western culture kind of took over. It's a lot similar to very like the what we're going through now with Yellowstone.
yeah, for
Like there's
sure.
kind of like a rebirth of cowboy culture, ranchers, Western lifestyle, and they've kind of kicked off had a couple episodes where they were at the Four Sixes Ranch,
Right.
which is in Guthrie, Texas, which is in between here and Lubbock. You drive
Yeah,
through there.
and they just bought the steakhouse and the stockyards,
Oh dang,
and so it's like they're taking over.
Sheridan, right? It's his name, I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a whole nother deal where I think, and if they ever do any kind of spinoff that's set at the Four Sixes Ranch, I think I can, and I guarantee you, I noticed that after Yellowstone kind of did those episodes where Jimmy went to the Four Six
Yeah.
Ranch, like all of a sudden, if you get on I started getting ads for like Four Six Ranch, like hats and
Yeah.
merch and stuff, which I think before, like nobody would have been too interested
Yeah.
in that. It's just like a huge ranch that you'd pass through on the way to Lubbock. But now I think it's like gaining traction of like the cool factor. So
Yeah.
it could be something, again, where Texas culture and that Western lifestyle
Yeah.
has an effect on people nationwide.
Well, think about Walker, Texas Ranger, and
gosh, yeah.
not necessarily the effect on fashion, but there's one episode because being in Fort Worth, some of those were shot around Granbury, Weatherford, in the stockyards. But there's an episode about a family, a barbecue family, that had a dispute and broke up, and they never said who they were, and I have no clue if it was, but I've always wondered if that was the Black's barbecue down in Lockhart. I don't know, but
Yeah.
but talking about that barbecue, that I mean, you can't talk about Texas without thinking about the Texas barbecue scene and how that's impacted not just Texas, but worldwide. People travel here just to taste Texas barbecue.
No, yeah. And then there's so many, I guess, people that have lived in Texas that have moved to other states that have started like Texas style
Yeah,
barbecue and things like that. I know there's a couple places in LA that
yeah.
they're from Texas and they're doing it the way they
Well,
cook it in Texas,
where,
which they've never.
where do we go? Charleston,
Charleston.
and what was that place? Louis Mueller.
No. Leroy. I can't remember his name. Anyway, he left to go to.
Yeah.
He left Austin and he started a place up there in Charleston. But it's definitely, I think, the barbecue culture, just all the hype it's got, and when people come down and try it, they're like, holy cow,
Yeah.
this is on a different level. And it's
Well,
just different. I mean, we have, like, again, we have so many different regions, and so
well, the thing about, there's two things. One, we were out when we did our New York trip with our wives. There was the Hill Country.
Hill Country Barbecue.
Saw Mike and the Moon Pies out
It
there,
was awesome. Yeah.
and it was Texas barbecue. And I want to say that they were shipping beef out from Black's to that location for New Yorkers to say they were eating truly Texas barbecue.
I believe their sausage was being
From Kreitz?
flown in from Kreitz.
Yeah.
In Lockhart, which is crazy. So that was, yeah. So I mean, seriously, Texas, there's kind of this thing about it. People just, I think it's worldwide.
Yeah.
You know, there's
the thing about that European story. The dude, kind of the European Shark Tank, that had reached out to us to do T-shirts because he had a Texas barbecue brand out there.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? It's, but he was shipping in meat from Lockhart all the way out to Europe.
Wow.
And he is kind of the similar brand restaurant in New York, but out in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And fast forward to that point, he was promoting our brand out there.
Texas Joe's.
And he's from UT. I think he actually went to UT.
Yeah.
Lived out there. But we've had someone come to our store because they saw him promoting our brand all the way out there in Europe.
That's really cool.
They flew here for a business trip and actually stopped by our store because of him.
Yeah.
So it's, it's just incredible.
Texas has a huge impact worldwide. I mean, there's always going to be these little ebbs and flows of trends and stuff. But like, maybe in Japan, like Western is the cool thing, and like anything Texas is hip and all that. And then the urban cowboy, that whole deal, the Yellowstone thing we're going through now. I really think that, Texas is always going, and of course, Dallas Cowboys, they're America's team. So there's going to be people that are all over the country that like the Cowboys just because of that aura that they have, that kind of mystique of Cowboys. Everything's bigger in Texas, it's Western, it's
for sure.
It's cool. And so it's fun to be from here and be able to, that's just goes back to the whole pride thing. I mean, it's just like, we have really kind of some true culture that Texas owns and that we kind of, own alone, I guess. And so that's what kind of makes Texas unique. And I think that was definitely why we started this company, and had kind of that in mind, to kind of play off that and use Texas pride, as a niche that we wanted to dive into.
Which leads us to March 2nd. And for the last 10 years, we've celebrated our March 2nd Texas Independence Day. And it's not about the aggression and the guns and necessarily the cannons. It's, to me, us celebrating the culture, the life that we just laid out in this podcast episode. I know we're running out of time, but I just want to quickly highlight a few of our favorite memories. I mean, right now, at least around Texas, like everyone, it seems like every brand and who knows who's throwing a concert on March 2nd. But 8 years ago, I don't remember anyone outside of us really celebrating this day. What's some of your favorite memories that we've had as Tumbleweed Textiles on our March 2nd?
Wow. Well, my first big memory this was crazy, but we were invited by Tamron Hall. Tamron Hall
sure.
From MSNBC. They caught wind of our brand and they wanted to have us on for Texas Independence Day. So
yeah, for sure.
Brian and I got on a plane on like March the 1st, or it would have been the day before March 2nd. So we're going to fly up.
Yeah.
We get 2/3 of the way to New York. We're like so pumped. We're gonna be on set with Tamron Hall. This is so awesome. And she's a Texan, by the way. That's why she wanted us. So we're gonna be on MSNBC national. I mean, it was gonna be awesome.
Yeah. We
get 2/3 of the way, and they're like, there's way too much snow and ice on the runway at LaGuardia. We are turning the plane around.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we were like, no. And
they
turned that plane around. We landed back in Dallas. And we're like, oh man, this is terrible.
We were trying to pay for internet, trying to figure out how we were going to resolve this issue.
Yeah. So anyway, the PR girl at the time, she was able to arrange something. So we were able to meet with via like a telemonitor type of situation with Tamron Hall. So we didn't actually get to physically meet her. We sat in some little room about like this with a camera on us with the earplug, and we couldn't really see her, and she could. We could just hear her, and it was weird. But anyway, we got to meet with Tamron Hall.
Yeah.
That was really cool. We also did some spots with WFAA
For sure,
Channel
yeah.
8 here locally. I guess 2 years in a row we were
Mhm.
able to do their kind of their Good Morning Texas
Yeah.
type of situation thing.
That's, Colleen Coyle, if you remember her,
Right.
the weather lady there, meteorologist, was a mentor to one of my students, and so she opened that door to get us in there, which was an incredible opportunity.
So that was a
Yeah,
fun. Those were fun. Just kind of being able to share our brand locally to the
yeah.
local folks on March 2nd and kind of really play that up. We had a fun night one night at the Rustic.
That's
set up
that's one of my favorite memories.
That was a fun. It was. I just remember it being a beautiful, beautiful day,
Yeah,
and it was a really nice, cool kind of evening. And they had can't remember who was playing, but they had some really good
uh,
music, and we were just kind of
yeah,
hanging out there on the grass, and had a couple shirts for sale,
yeah,
and people were just
and
being super fun and
I think our
friendly.
friend Tori was there,
Tori Gonzalez,
yeah,
yeah, she was there.
yeah, and then, of course, one of my favorites was last year.
Yeah,
We threw a
last year
big
was
old celebration over at, the local rail yard with, John Bauman and
mhm.
live music, great drinks from TX Whiskey,
Johnny Fred played
Johnny
too.
Fred, yeah, and, our local Melody of Hope had an artist as well, so we've been celebrating hard, a lot of fun, and, we talk about all the influences of the Texas culture, and there's a little bit of my selfishness that believes that we've helped enhance the March 2nd day to see the impact of, how many other brands and restaurants and bars and concerts are now taking place, I think because people have seen us hype that day up
Yeah,
over the last 10 years.
I take the day off from school usually. That's how much I
Yeah.
hype it up. I take that day off. The first day they let us do absences, like in July, I always put in for March 2nd.
You're sick
So
those days?
yeah, I'm
No.
kind of sick.
But yeah, man, Tumbleweed Textiles would not be what it is if it wasn't for the culture of Texas. And I'm just thankful for you, Jeb, obviously having an immense amount of knowledge, but just the ability for you to have traveled in so many places, lived in so many places. It's amazing how God kind of used those experiences to create our art, which has allowed us to be maybe a small part of, maybe some other podcast one day is talking about that Tumbleweed Textiles brand.
Yeah, right on. That would be really cool. But yeah, so we always do a big sale on March 2nd too. So if you're listening to this when it drops,
Yeah,
check out our website. We'll probably have some good deals for you or something. And then I know we're going to do some stuff in store
yeah,
on March 2nd. So if you get a hold of this early, we'll
yeah,
be hyping it up. But we'll probably have some drinks, possibly some little bites of food, some music, stuff like that.
yeah.
So
Have a good time.
it'll be fun. We'll just celebrate Texas, all the great things about it. Like we mentioned, there's so many things that are cool about the state that we love. And so if you don't do anything else, pop open a cold Dr. Pepper, get you some barbecue, get you a taco, something like that, or
Yeah.
get you a Lone Star, make you feel a little bit more Texan. And for all you newcomers to Texas, welcome. And if you really want to immerse yourself in Texas, celebrate that Texas Independence Day with us,
Yeah.
or just at your house.
Texas forever, y'all.
Texas forever. Y'all have a great day.
Thank y'all.